Let's start by putting the date at the top. I'm putting 2/12 because these are the notes for February 12th, even though you're probably viewing this on the 11th. Fill in your page number. And we have the first two definitions that we need to start off with. And the first one is slope. We've talked a little bit about slope. We've talked about it as being the steepness of a line. And now we're going to use slope to do some graphing and some equation writing. And the y-intercept is the y-coordinate where a line crosses the crosses the y-axis. And the value or the variable that we use for that is a letter b. So you'll see a 0 and a b, and the b represents our y-intercept. And you'll see this happy hat in your notes, and the y stands for any y-coordinate. The m is, again, our slope, our value for slope. The x is any x-coordinate in any point that we're dealing with that lands on a line. And we have our b, which we just said is our y-intercept. And that's the y-coordinate where it crosses the y-axis. And to review, we have a few different types of slope here. We have a positive slope, and we talked about that as looking at a line from left to right. We're going uphill, so we have a positive number. And if we're looking at a line from left to right and it's going downhill, then we have a negative slope. If there's no rise, then we have a slope of 0, m equals 0. And if there is no run, we have a vertical line, which means that there's no slope or it's undefined. And you have our two little skateboarders here, and he's just showing that you have a steeper ramp, that's going to be a higher number. And if you have a not so steep ramp, it's going to be a smaller number, but it's not going to be below 0. So let's review a little bit. Identify the slope given the graph below. We did this a few days ago, and we have point A and point B that we're working with here. And I don't need the coordinates at this point. Like, all we've done so far is looked at slope as the rise over the run. And that means that from left to right, I'm going to count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now I'm going to turn. And I'm going to count over my run 1, 2, 3, 4. So you see here I've put a -6, and that's because I really wasn't rising, but I was falling. So the change was a -6, where the run, I always run in the same direction. I run forward, and that was a +4. Now this simplifies down to a -3/2. So the slope that we're looking for on this line is -3/2. So where is this line specifically crossing the y-axis so we can find the y-intercept? Well, it looks like it's crossing right there. And so I don't have an exact value at that point. I can kind of estimate right now that it's a -1/2. And so my b is -1/2. And the coordinates there are 0, -1/2. And remember, this is the y-intercept, our b value, our y-coordinate. Take a look at example number 2. We have a horizontal line. So that means, from what we just talked about up above, that our slope is 0. And where is this line crossing the y-axis? I think my graph is a little bit off from what your notes might say. Mine looks like it's crossing at a +2, but I believe the handout that you got in class is crossing at b equals 4. So I'm going to write b equals 2 here and check yours to see where yours is crossing your graph. It could have been a problem with cutting and pasting into the video. Examples 3 and 4 are doing the exact same thing here. We have a vertical line. There was something special about a vertical line. The slope was no slope or undefined. And that's because I can rise, but I am not running at all. And so on the bottom, my denominator, I would have a value of 0, and that's a no-no. We can't have that. And again, we don't have a y-intercept either because the vertical line is never going to cross the y-axis. It only crosses the x-axis. So there's no y-intercept for this one. For example number 4, you want to pick 2 points on this line. Any 2 that you can find the coordinates of. So I'm going to mark a point right there and another one over this ways, which happens to be or looks like it's crossing the y-axis. Again, your example number 4 may be a little different, so it's actually good practice for you. In my example here, it looks like I'm rising 1 and I'm running 4. Rising 1 and running 4. And it gives me a value of -6 at the y-intercept. That looks like 0, -6. So practice your example. Your example number 4 in your handout might be a little different, and we can always talk about that one tomorrow if you mark that down as a question you might have. So down here we have steps. We have steps to identify B, and then we have a second point that we want to pick on the line, and we want to be able to find the rise over run with that. And so we're going to find the slope and the y-intercept from just a graph. And so my examples here that I have, I need to find the y-intercept, which happens to be right here, and it looks like it is at +1/2. And then from that point, it looks like I am falling 1 and running 2 spaces. So I have a y-intercept of b equals of 1/2, and then I have a negative slope because I'm going downhill from left to right, and it looks like my slope is a -1/2. Now your example in this is a little bit different, so I want you to try that when we're done with this and practice, and we'll go over it tomorrow. Next thing that I can do with this is I can do y equals mx plus b, remember from our happy hat, where y is a coordinate, m is -1/2 from our picture, x is another coordinate, and then I have a b, which is another 1/2. So now you've gone from finding b, finding the rise over run, to writing the equation of this line, and this line is y equals -1/2 x plus 1/2. So I want you to try all 3 of those steps, finding b, finding m, and writing the equation for your example number 1 on your handout. And over here for number 2, we're going to do the exact same thing. Looks like it's crossing my y-axis at -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So my b is -6. And then it looks like it's rising 2 and running 1. So my slope is 2 over 1. And so then I have the equation y equals mx plus b, where y is any coordinate that it's a point on the line. The m is 2 over 1 or 2. X goes in the equation, and then we have a -6 for b. So try your example number 2 in your handout, and we will go over that one tomorrow. Okay, down here we have finding the slope using the slope formula, and the slope formula is something that you have to memorize. It will be on your reference sheet for the exam. And it says m equals x2 minus, or excuse me, y2 rather, minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And I just go by saying, okay, 0, 3, that's an x and that's a y, 2, 0, that's an x, that's a y. And you can do any order that you want. You just have to be consistent when you set it up as a ratio. So if I start with the second point, the y over here is my x2, y2. I have 0 minus 3 for the y's. And then for the x's, I have 2 minus 0. And so that becomes -3 over 2, and that's in its simplified reduced form. I can also think of m equals, if I'm looking at a graph, the change in y over the change in x, and we also say that as delta y over delta x. That triangle stands for the delta symbol. So let's try this again. We have x1, y1, x2, y2, m equals. So our y2 is 3, minus our y1, which is a -1. So I actually have a double negative here, which becomes, and we change them both to positives. And so on the bottom we have x2 is 4 minus x1, which is a -2. Again, I have that we talk about all the time, and changing both to positives. So m equals 3 plus 1 is 4, over 4 plus 2 is 6, reduces to 2/3. And the last one, it's missing this 2 here. You should have it on your handout as 2, 1 and 2, -2. So if I plotted these 2 points on a graph, what is the slope of the line? So if I have graph paper, I can go ahead, plot those 2 points, and just count, rise over run. But at the moment, I don't have graph paper, so I'm going to use my slope formula again. I'm going to do -2 minus 1 over 2 minus 2. Right away, I'm thinking this has got to be a red flag because 2 minus 2 is 0. And so it doesn't matter what the numerator is. The bottom, the denominator is 0, so this has no slope. It's undefined. So I have gone through all of the notes on slope and y-intercept. We have a few examples that we will go over tomorrow in class, and then we'll see how you did with taking your notes, any questions you may have. I'm going to give you 2 videos for today with the same examples. It may have just been cut and pasted a little bit better. So feel free to watch both of them, take notes on both of them. It should only take you about 10 to 15 minutes at the most.